to make an announcement for public comments?
Oh, that's me. I'm just checking to make sure we're live. Okay, we're live.
Terrific. Good afternoon, good evening. It's good to see everyone. I'm so glad that you all were able to make it, and I hope you don't mind Zooming rather than driving downtown. It's not a perfect environment, but it'll work for the purposes of us. I don't know if Brigitte or your chat popped up covering me, or Jarre, and I apologize if I said your name incorrectly. Have any past experience working with library policies? And do you have any questions about it? I tried to send you some documents to help serve as a guide as we go through these documents. And then I noticed one of the things that I think are very important about policies is that they don't leave anything. Well, we'll talk about it, but I noticed that there are some wording in these policies that I think would be hard for somebody who had to follow the policies to interpret, because everybody's definition or acceptance of a word or can be different. So that's the first thing. The second thing I wanted to share with you is I see our role more as reviewing it and giving suggestions. I rely on Melanie and Scott and to take a look at it and know how they work in the real life. I don't want to come up with a policy that looks good on paper, but for the staff, impossible to carry out, if that makes any sense. So,
Sarah, if
yeah.
I may interject really quick, you have to call the meeting to order. You never officially did that.
Oh, I thought I did. I'd like to call the meeting to order at 5:32. All board members are in attendance. And then let's move on. The first policy, because it's alphabetically starts with A, is the art exhibition policy. My big issue with this one is how does it relate to the contracts that different groups have to sign to put up art? And I would also like clarification for the staff. Are we talking about the display cases that community members put things in, or is this the art exhibition that has to do with the windows and the hanging exhibits in the branches?
Sarah, I apologize. I'm just going to chime in real quick. I want to note, since the meeting is officially called to order, there is no public comment. Anyone from the public that wishes to make a comment are asked to send an email to publiccomment@albanypubliclibrary.org, publiccomment@albanypubliclibrary.org. Please include your name and street address, and your public comments would be read during these times. Also, you can leave a voicemail at 518-290-6905. A note for the committee, since she wants to go in alphabetical order, I have reorganized board docs so you can see the policies in order. And that's it for now.
Thank you so much for doing that. Okay, so this is the first policy, the art exhibition policy. Does this, and I'm asking the APL staff, does this have, does this mesh, does this dovetail with the contracts that people need to sign in order to exhibit?
So per your inquiry earlier, yes, this does cover both the art at APL exhibits that we do with the Alpaca Gallery. And it does also cover the branch designed displays as well, where the branches contact individual artists or work with individual groups to display art in the library. So this does cover both. It's been vetted by legal previously, because this was obviously adopted in 2013 when the art show also debuted. So it works in tandem with the two.
Okay, thank you. I have two comments, and then I'll open it up to the rest of the committee and APL staff. Number 3, how do you define high artistic merit? This is a situation where I guess the art is in the eye of the beholder.
That's pretty much how we see it. It's in the eye of the beholder, it's in the eye of the person. And we do have an art committee when it comes to the art at APL display exhibits. The other ones are usually in conjunction with local artists or school districts.
Okay,
Scott, did you want to pop in with anything?
And just to back up what Melanie is saying, is just like the collection, just like programming, just like really just like the collection, just like programming, our staff curates the collection, and it's based on what they know is best practice and what's considered high level art. Same with programming when we select programmers when we aren't doing programming ourselves. So yes, this is left up to the staff, but the staff are already playing a role as curators.
Okay, then instead of saying artwork must have high artistic merit, perhaps it needs to be approved by the curator committee. And they could have their standards. I just have a hard time with a policy saying high artistic merit.
I would recommend we don't leave it up to the curation committee completely, because the individual branches do have say in what is displayed, and they're like display cases and working with individuals within the community for that reason. So I'd like it to, if possible, if we could, have wording that states artwork must be vetted by the art exhibition committee or branch staff.
Okay, I'm fine with that.
Scott, would that work for you as well?
Yeah, I think that works. Something that just speaks to the fact that the staff are curating.
That's fine. I just don't like, as I said 3 times before, high artistic merit, because I don't know how you could define that. And then how do you deal with censorship issues or issues when a member of the public is unhappy with the choices? Do you have a reconsideration document?
We've been talking about, sorry, I live on the flight path for Albany International. So I would say that how we've been handling this with programming, because I've brought this up about programming as well, is I do believe it might be a good thing for the library to have a reconsideration form, just like we do for collection. And I'd love for this committee to take on the same idea for programming. So, or maybe even public meetings, but we won't go there. So, this might be an opportunity for us to build it into this policy, and then that might inform us later to build it into programming as well.
I think that would also protect the library because I think a lot of cases are lost by libraries is because they don't have a reconsideration process.
Yep.
I'm talking too much, ladies.
No, go ahead. I'm just listening. No, but I did have a question, not on the art exhibit, but it just made me think about is the same policy or the same procedure when you post the informational on the boards. If someone just comes in and says they want, something in the community that's happening, do you have that as well? Or, is there a process?
So that is a separate policy. That's the display of public notices policy.
Oh,
That's a
okay.
completely separate policy.
Right. Well, I know that. That's what just made me think of that at the time. So.
Good question. Jure, you're happy with everything?
I did have a couple questions in reference to the art exhibition committee. Who exactly is that? So I was online trying to find and referencing this policy. It was saying that it must meet the submission guidelines. So I was looking for the submission or application for it. I couldn't find it on APL's website, and I couldn't find it on OPACA's website. So where do they submit their artwork for review to be in the art at APL?
So the curators with Alpaca Gallery will send out, depending on the show, because they usually pick a theme. So they'll submit, it's not one submission guideline for the entire project. It depends on the specific show. So they create the guidelines for the specific show, what the theme is that they're doing, and then they do a call for artists through that. So that's why there's not one set guidelines, because it's done separately for each show.
So if you have an artist for an Albany, right? Local artist, capital region artist, there isn't necessarily a call for a show, but they want to exhibit their art at APL. Where do they go to get more information in regards to submission? Because even to me, that really wasn't clear that they only make calls for art at a certain time or exhibitions at a certain time. And these are, let's say, for example, we have 4 times a year that we hold exhibitions, and these are the dates that these are the guidelines in reference to what the submission requirements are. I just didn't see really any of that. It wasn't really too clear.
So with this policy, it's a difficult policy because it's overarching. It's not just the art at APL program that we do with Alpaca, but when the individual branches are like, hey, it's National Pet Lovers Month. Do we have a local artist that paints pictures of pets? Well, we know John down the street does. We'll contact him. And they work individually with artists that they've identified regionally and locally. So that's for the submission for individual short-term displays at the branches. It's usually those branches reaching out to the individual artists. So there's really not a call for submission. The larger curated shows with Alpaca, it's part of the contract that they handle the curating of that. So they submit the calls, and correct me if I'm wrong, because everything has changed in the last 2 years, Scott. It is 2 shows a year, correct?
2 shows a year. But, I like the direction Jare is going with this, is that, if we had something that people could submit, not necessarily for the art show, but we have these, at certain branches, we have a significant amount of room that artists might choose to want their art displayed. An opportunity to have on our website or a part of it as an addendum to this policy that we could send people, that's protection for the organization. And it's also an opportunity to provide, most artists probably don't know that, they can present at our branches, be a part of a display. So it might be a really good way to get artists who just aren't plugged in to do it. And a clear process for our branch managers to follow. So it's not just, who they know, but maybe it could get some other artists involved and engaged as well. So I like the idea. My only concern is that this might, and it's a very, very small might, this might lead us down a road of if a piece sells or if a piece is damaged, how it's handled. But other than that, I think I'm a big fan of written process. I think, and it sounds like Ripley is too. I'm a big fan of having a written process. And I think as an addendum to this, I think that might be a really good idea for us.
So if a piece is sold or is damaged, isn't there already a procedure with the ongoing exhibitions that you already have? Wouldn't it just fall in line with what you already have?
Yes, right now we're not allowing anything to be sold, but that's come up in conversations before. Our insurance, we have had pieces damaged in the past, so we would probably just follow that procedure.
Mm-hmm.
But
Or
other than
maybe
that,
if someone wants to buy something, maybe let's say the exhibition ends in September. At the end of that time, they can contact the artist themselves and handle whatever purchasing outside of us that they would like to do.
absolutely.
And that comes
just-
back to artistic merit.
It sounds like Alpaca is the one, if you're not on their radar in reference to really who they're contacting, because like she said, we have something, your pet lovers, do you guys have any artists that paint pets? You already have to be on their radar. They already have to know about you. But if it's, you're trying to get other artists exposure, they're probably not even going to be on their radar enough to even be recommended to paint dogs,
Sure. And I mean, again, this policy speaks to two things. It speaks to the regular exhibitions that we do in our, I'm thinking Washington Avenue, we have those large kind of display cases. In some of our branches, we have large display cases. And, we have done other art shows with other programs. And then the two major art shows that we do in partnership with Friends and Foundation and Alpaca as the curator.
How do you get stuff in your display cases?
It's usually a cooperation with the school districts and, like I said, local artists that have been identified by the individual branches. Like Delaware has an ongoing postcard display because there's a gentleman who has a large collection in the community of historical postcards. So like, I believe once a year he brings his prized parts of his collection to do a display. The high schools generally do, or middle schools will reach out, our librarians will reach out to the individual schools and ask for artwork to be displayed, usually at the end of the year. What was it? Arbor Hill, they did the photography exhibition about the historic Arbor Hill and West Hill neighborhoods and stuff like that. So it's usually that individuals in the community are in discussions with the branch managers and they talk about, hey, I have this available. Would you guys like to put it on display? And it's usually just a handshake.
Which is very similar to the way we do programming. And I wouldn't want to see that go away. But I do agree that, I mean, we really should have something a little clearer to let people know that these possibilities exist. And also to really clearly state out the process that we do it so that there's a little bit of coverage. So if somebody has to say no, for one reason or another, or, I like the idea of being more public about it so people know that the opportunity is there.
So this needs a little bit more work. We need to add something about how people can reach out to the library to see if they can book the space. Develop a reconsideration form. Did I capture everything?
Yes. So that would go along with number 4.
I think really just there needs to be a creation for 2 addendums. One is, how to apply to have your artwork shown, an application to have to display artwork, and then a reconsideration form as 2 addendums. But I don't see anything other than the high artistic merit, which I'm absolutely love getting rid of. If you know me well enough, never.
That just hits me the wrong way in so many ways. Are we in agreement in getting rid of committee number 3?
Yes, to be more,
Yes.
yes,
Can you guys see my screen? 'Cause I
Yes,
shared
Yes.
it.
thank
Okay,
you for
so I
keeping
do
the
have-
notes
The artwork must be vetted by the art exhibition committee or the branch management staff. So we have,
before it can be displayed or accepted.
Now, the
Right,
art
and-
exhibition committee is through Alpaca, right? Or no?
yes. And that's specifically for the 2 large curated shows.
Okay.
And then the branch management staff would be for everything else.
Yep.
Okay. It's such a wonderful feeling to say, oh, it's okay, we can move on, but that never happens, or very rarely.
but, and then the number 4, that where you're gonna put the addendum, like, what is the submission guidelines? You're gonna, continue, yeah. Because the addendum, the explanation or the rules and regulations of what the submission guidelines are.
That we'd have to determine those and lay those out in the submission form.
Right.
Okay. And I'm going to ask the APL staff to do that because you know the interworkings of your organization. I'll be happy to come up with a draft reconsideration form.
We should probably mirror after the reconsideration form for books as well. So
Correct. Unless you want to do a quick pulling of that, Melanie.
I could probably rework something.
Okay, so we'll leave this as is if everybody's in agreement. And we'll review it next time with the addendums.
Great.
Thank you. Thank you. First aid policy. I sent Melanie some questions. My first one is this for the public or the staff?
It's considered a staff policy.
Is there something, God forbid somebody gets hurt, for the public?
1 second. I think this is.
I believe when this was written, it was written so that it would be dual. So
Yes.
it's much like, Sarah, that the trends for a while in libraries that you write a policy, the policy is for both patrons and staff, much like our behavior policy is for patrons and staff. So I remember reviewing this, and that was the conversation because this was a little denser last go around. And so the Good Samaritan law works for both patrons and staff.
So what we
Okay.
had is and this is, I was going to bring this up here. We do have a separate policy per se that says first aid kit supplies for our minimum stock. I'd like to actually combine the 2. So it's not 2 separate policies, but one policy that this is what we do for first aid. And this is what would be in our minimum stock of our first aid kits.
Yes.
And then, yes, and that is correct, which Scott had said, this was a dual one that covered both staff and public, because if you look at the way it is written, Albany Public Library is committed to creating and maintaining a safe and healthy environment for both the public and the employees of the library. It was right in the
Okay.
top purpose.
But in the policy, that's the purpose, but in the policy, it reflects employee. It doesn't say anything about the public. That's why I was confused. So it's instead of employee, in the event an individual
Okay. Yep,
person.
thank you. I totally that one over my head. Yeah. Injured on premises. Yeah. Hold on.
And in the supply kit also, I'm bouncing around and I apologize. You have Narcan, and is that part of the first aid kit?
Yes, it is. Yes, we do
And
have
it's-
Narcan, and it's part of our first aid kit.
And it's not in, I didn't see it listed in what is in the first aid kit.
We can add that. It was, the first aid kit supplies was actually written before we got the Narcan, so that's why.
That's why we review them.
Yep.
And then it's not injured on the job, but is injured in the building or grounds
On the
or
premises.
premises. Now, do you want the public to treat their own injuries?
We actually, and I know kind of past practice has been if an individual injures themselves, and it's usually I got a paper cut. Like we very seldomly do we have any major injuries. It's generally if it's handing a Band-Aid, we let the person handle the Band-Aid and put the Band-Aid on themselves.
Okay,
If it's anything larger, then it follows under the Good Samaritan. It's up to the person, the staff member, if they're comfortable, or if the person has asked for assistance.
okay. Ladies,
How many first aid kits are at each branch? Does it
So
does
we
it
have a-
mean the capacity of how much the branch can hold? How many
So we
people?
have a minimum of 2 kits per branch. We do 1 at each service desk. So generally the circulation desk and the reference desk each have a first aid kit. And Washington Avenue, where they have a 3rd service desk, the youth services desk on the 2nd floor, they have an additional one. And then Washington Avenue also has one upstairs on the 3rd floor as well. So, and that's minimum, that I know what, and then generally what happens is some of the items get used out of a first aid kit. Our facilities department replenishes and buys a brand new first aid kit, and the old supplies usually get scattered amongst, somebody will keep some in their desk, somebody will, but we do have the standard minimum that each location has, the 2, or in Washington Avenue's case, 3 first aid kits. They're kept in emergency bags. They're bright red bags. They're kept at the circulation desks, and they also go with the staff members when they evacuate the buildings in case of fire or any other building evacuation. So they're told to grab the red bags and exit the building.
Yeah, thank you. I read your response to Sarah. So thanks.
Just a quick question. How often are they checked or replenished?
Sure, they're checked regularly, at least twice a year. I know our facilities manager has that kind of on his general schedule to check those every so often. And we do ask the staff if they see that the supplies are getting low, because they're getting utilized, that they notify our facilities manager that they need to be replenished before those dates.
Okay.
I understand this is for minor injuries, except now we have Narcan in the kit. Do we need to have something about filling out an accident report
We have
or
a
an
separate,
incident report? I understand that, but how many people in this, will staff members read every single policy and,
hope so.
or should
they're
it be?
required to when they are hired. That is part of their onboarding process, that they are sat down and walk through each individual process. And we go through the incident reporting process at least once a year with staff.
Okay,
And
so,
we also do a brief coverage of these policies whenever they're reviewed by P&G. So once the board makes changes, we send a memo out to supervisors, but they also get put on the agenda for the all staff. So really the goal is whenever this group meets, whatever policies get covered, the staff get reminded that they need to look at the cover, what policies we list what policies were looked at, briefly what they're about, and that everybody should be looking at them. Any policies that are changed, the changes get codified in a memo, and the memo gets sent out, and they have to sign off on the memo.
okay,
So
so
There's a
based
review
on that,
process built
thank
in.
you. Based on that, you don't think a line about seeing the incident report policy is necessary? You know your staff better than me.
I mean, we
Our
kind of drill
Our
it into staff.
Yeah, our
Okay.
experience is they'll write an incident report if the wind blows.
Okay,
A bag across the parking lot, which is good, which we like. I'm not saying that negatively. I'm just putting it in context. And sometimes we'll get multiple incidents that we have to comb through when we report out. So I don't believe there's an issue with people not writing incident reports. If there's an injury, they're going to write an incident report.
okay. Ladies, anything else?
Yeah, it just kind of sounds like just maybe just hearing the dialogue that maybe it should be one policy that's all inclusive, so things aren't floating out there separately, so it's all in one. First aid is with the first aid kit, is with the incident report. I mean, I'm sure there has to be an incident report also attached to with the behavior policy, right? If you have an incident regarding that. So maybe just all of it inclusive together regarding one first aid policy that covers it all. So there aren't multiple items floating out there. Is there an incident report in the first aid kit itself?
No, it's
Or
our
a
incident reporting is online. It's a
Oh, okay.
form that they fill out on the intranet, and it's for all incidents. So it's behavior incidents, injury incidents. Anytime the police or any emergency personnel have been called to the building for any reason, it covers a lot. That's why there's that separate policy. And then we have a separate guideline statement. To include them all in one, I only am concerned that it would get to be an overwhelming document that after the third page, people would stop reading, because I know this policy is 1 page, the workplace violence and incident reporting policies, at least 3 pages.
Oh, no, I was just meaning about the first aid itself.
Mhm.
In reference to what Sarah was saying, an incident report attached to the first aid policy in regards to the supplies for the first aid kit, all in the first aid policy. So this is the first aid policy. These are the supplies we have in each first aid kit. These are where they're located. An incident report should be filled out if this should happen. That's all I was saying, just to combine all those issues into one regarding just specifically first aid. I understand behavioral, incident, that's a whole nother issue. I was just saying in reference to first aid.
We can easily put just in the policy, if an injury occurs on premises, please complete the incident report located on the intranet. Would that work?
Yes.
Sure.
Great.
Okay.
Is it I would like a time frame within, 24 hours before, within the 24 hours that the incident occurred, or the same day or something like that. So
I think we were a little lenient and gave them 48 hours in our policy, just because when we are open on the weekends, and sometimes if something happens at closing on a Saturday, they wait until Monday morning to write the policy. I mean, that's up to you guys, though, if you think that should change down to 24.
Well, 40, I just know, things are fresh in your mind. What happens if they write notes about it? I mean, not, just write something down that something took place, because you may forget. I mean, if everybody's happy with 48.
I'm not, that is something I'm agreeing with Brigitte. I know that we often allow people because it's closing and they want to get out and yada, yada, yada. However, I'm not, as someone with a security background, I'm not comfortable with that.
Neither am I.
So
Something that I think the union might have.
There's nothing in the contract, and if you're from the union and you're watching, I'm sorry, but there's nothing in the contract that talks anything about incident reports. So,
Correct.
I mean, if it's in the policy and the board thinks it's important enough, being in the policy just means that we're going to enforce it through the process. So if we want to change that language, your executive director is not opposed. I'll just leave it at that and let the board figure it out.
Are there any repercussions if an employee does not fill out an incident report in the said 24 or 48 hours? Because wouldn't that be a liability for the library?
Yeah, they can be written up. If you don't fill out an incident report, I mean, that could be a part of progressive discipline, especially if it's a regular trend. I mean, our hope would be you forgot to write your incident report, you get coached on how important the incident report is. But if you continually fail to write incident reports, then that goes to progressive discipline. Because I agree, because not only are these incident reports important for the organization and covering the organization, but it's important for the management that's on the ground to see, oh, we had an incident Friday with John Smith. John Smith has now walked in the door again. So I agree that the importance of incident reports being sent out quickly isn't just good for the organization, it's also beneficial to peers and management at that particular location.
And just to kind of piggyback that, because I worked at a group home, and we had a, you had to look at the book when you took somebody's shift over. So is there somewhere that, keep the copy of the incident report, as you said, that if John Smith is a behavioral problem, or he had such incidents, he's falling and tripping, or, continuously, is somewhere that, someone on staff or the research desk or service desk can look in and say, oh, yeah, he was here Friday, they had a problem.
Yeah, it goes to the heads of branches, and myself and Melanie, and I think Annie as well, our community.
And it also gets held in a database.
Oh, okay.
Essentially, it's a Google form that we have people fill out, so it holds it in a spreadsheet. So
Yeah.
we can sort by patron, we can sort by branch, we can sort by.
Because we don't just it would be if there's a trip and fall, even if there was no first aid given, there's an expectation that trip and fall will be recorded as well, so that the facilities manager can look and see if it's an ice buildup or if there's a crack in the sidewalk.
Right.
And I'll share an experience. A library, somebody tripped. They were wearing flip-flops and tripped down the stairs. The staff said, "Are you okay?" They said yes. And then 6 months later, they sued the library for because she broke her ankle and she didn't realize it until later. So anything that's documented, I think, protects everyone. And that
then
library didn't.
Well, then also with the incident report, like you said, in that instance, does the patron sign something saying, yes, I'm okay, and I'm not going to come back 6 months later and say my ankle is broken now? I mean, you said you're okay. We asked you said okay, and you signed it. And so I think that would just strengthen, if it's something like that, a trip and fall, or something, as serious as that the patron should also sign off, that everything was done. We asked them if they needed any kind of medical assistance. They said no. And that was it. So
I think that's a great question that we probably should bring to council, because I know that there's very limited, getting anybody to sign off on anything beforehand has really limited impact in the court. So,
right.
When you go to Billy Beans and you sign off that you're not going to hold it against Billy Beans if Eli falls and breaks his ankle, that doesn't really hold up as well in court as people wish. And that was Eli yelling in the background.
Where are we done with this first aid policy?
I believe so.
Is this ready to be seen by the full board next month? I think tomorrow's too soon.
I think if everybody's okay with the changes, Rebecca, can this be added?
You can add it, but Scott just brought up a good point about we have to talk to council about that whole section that you just concluded. So I think, and that's important to possibly add to the policy. So there's no way Bob's going to get back to you in a few hours.
Yeah.
No?
I think what'll be good, council will have to review all these policies before they're brought to the full board.
Yeah, maybe.
So my suggestion would be on this and the art policy is to pass them how they stand. Work on the addendum for the art policy, the work on the two addendums with legal. And then if the board, typically what happens is the chair of the committee looks at the board's suggestions and decides whether or not, the board can discuss a policy at the full board meeting and then pass it back to committee. If they're not comfortable with it, And if the committee is comfortable with the changes made by legal and also the addendums made by staff, they can still bring it to the full board.
Right, but I think tomorrow's too soon.
Wait,
Yeah, any policy we're touching in this meeting, tomorrow, that ship has sailed.
yeah,
Once
that
Wednesday,
packet is finalized.
yeah, once the week before the board meeting goes past, you're at,
Right. The agenda's already been set, right?
yeah,
Agenda
it's-
set,
we're
plus the
talking the
public
next board
needs to
meeting.
have a sufficient time. The public, I believe, needs 3 days with the final packet, and that's why it goes live at midnight Saturday morning, to give sufficient time for the public to be able to review the whole agenda and attachments. So unfortunately, this will have to wait till at minimum October. I also suggest, after staff make the changes with guidance from council about a few of our questions, that the committee is probably going to need to meet again, probably in maybe 3 weeks or so, 2 or 3 weeks, in order to see what done.
I concur.
That's what I would recommend before the October meeting anyway.
Okay, so,
Although this meeting is a quick, because September is this one's a late meeting. Usually they're a little earlier in the month.
finding a date. Well, before we leave, we'll see if we can agree on a date that works for everybody. And having it virtually, meeting virtually, I think will be a little bit easier than trying to get everybody downtown. Thank you. Sometimes policies are written that it looks like they are really targeting an incident or 3 that may have happened. And this travel and meal policy really strikes me that way.
So I have to disagree with the Honorable Dallas on this. It wasn't. This was actually written. We have not really had a lot of abuse, and we rewrote this. I forgot what year, but recently.
17.
Yeah, 17. So in recent memory, this was really to really clear. We cut this down a lot. We made it a little bit more easier for interpretation, but really this was more in reaction to what we were seeing happening at other libraries, and really wanting to write a policy that covered all bases, and was really clear and not up to interpretation by anyone about what gets reimbursed. So I'm just disagreeing. This wasn't written.
Okay,
No one did anything wrong. This was more of I always like to remind people when it comes to conferences and travel, this is taxpayer money, and that there should never be any indication that taxpayer money is being abused for people to travel for conferences and training.
So Scott, is this policy used a lot? Is it often that people utilize this policy?
It used to, pre-pandemic. Right now, no. But yeah, libraries love conferences. Libraries love traveling for training. There's benefits to it. So, in a couple of years, when the pandemic has definitely calmed down, I'm sure that we'll start to see, over the course of time, we'll see more requests for travel and training. There's a state conference that a lot of people enjoy going to and like going to, and the training is good. That's in Buffalo, so there is some cost to travel and expenditure.
Syracuse this year, I think.
Syracuse
this year. And then there's a PLA, Public Library Association conference that people want to go to, and the American Library Association conference that I've gone to. And there's also a director summit that I like to go to, which is a national summit, which is beneficial because this is where we get to interact with librarians who work in libraries that are more like ours. There's the Urban Librarians Conference that happens in Brooklyn that we try to get staff to travel to. For a library our size in the area that we're in, there's not too many libraries. There's not a lot of training, and there's not a lot of interaction with librarians who work in the same type of library and same size library that serves the same constituents, unless you travel to a state or national conference. So the short of it is, yes, in better times, there is a lot of travel for training.
And that
Thank-
leads me, but it's a perfect segue. What's this international flights? I have no problem supporting staff going to conferences locally, statewide, or nationally. Iceland, I'm not so comfortable with. That's section 2, expenses that may be prepaid or reimbursed.
So we did have,
I would hate for policy to limit someone going to ILA if they were to present.
I'm
So,
sorry, I thought I was muted. I didn't realize that.
yeah,
I
I
was
would-
going to say it was included because of prior to me starting, because one of the reasons why this was written was because there was an employee who went to one of the IFLA conferences, which is the International Federation of Library Associations.
I find that unusual. I leave it to the rest of you. If I, in my organization, went to IFLA, that would be out of my pocket 100%. Again, it's taxpayer money.
Where
And
is
With
it?
you on that. I'm just saying, I was just giving you the historical background of why it was
Iceland.
included.
Well, it's an Iceland, well, it's all over the place. They go to different places.
They swap countries every year.
I actually have no problem with that. I'm a proponent of learning in different libraries could be different, and it's something, another perspective from another country, and just bringing back the information to everyone else. So I really don't have a
So
I don't,
Okay.
I'm sorry. Who typically would be somebody who would be going to IFLA conference in reference to the staff, and how much approximately do you think that would cost?
So it's been upper administration, so either the director or the assistant director would go to it. I didn't go to it, never gone to IFLA, just putting it out there. Always wanted to. Had a previous employer who tried to get me to go every year because he was highly involved in it. But I was never covered, so I could never afford this.
it's fairly rare that this happens. I have never gone. I have no interest in going. They have to convince me to go to ALA. Never mind, go to if I'm going to Iceland, I'm like hunting. I'm hunting gnomes. I'm not wasting any time on librarian stuff. We did discuss this when we reviewed this in the past. We are given a budget, so the administration is trusted by the board to allow people go to training. And if someone on staff came to me and said, "Listen, I have a paper that I want to present. It's been accepted at this conference, and this is someone who I think would gain from going to any conference anywhere, Iceland, Australia, Yonkers." If it's within our budget and it falls within, we think we can do it, I would hate to say no to them. So really,
Okay.
remember, after policy, another control after that is the executive director. So if we send Becky to I don't know, I'm running out of countries. If we send
Paris.
Is the big one.
Paris.
because she's been to Paris. We send Becky to Paris, and we've gone over budget, and the board should come to me and say, well, why did you send our the administrative assistant to Paris? And there's a good reason. That falls on me and my responsibility, and simultaneously it also falls on us in terms of budget. So
Okay.
if we overspend the budget, then the board should be slapping us on the hand for overspending the training and travel budget, and should call me to task for sending the administrative assistant to Paris on the training and travel budget.
So what's the cost? About like how much would that be for one
So-
person to even go?
I mean, obviously, international flights, you're looking at probably at least $1,000, if not more, for that. Conferences of that nature are usually about $500, and then you got lodging on top of it. So you're probably looking at least, I'd say at least $3,000.
Prior to this happening in the past, did it have to come to the board? Because I know at housing, before, if it was over a set amount of time for travel, it would have to get approved by the board. So would that be something like, as you said, if you're, I'm thinking about sending Rebecca, administrative assistant, to Iceland for $3,000, and it would have to come to the board to be approved prior to it happening. Is that part of the process or no?
If we included something in, I would not want to do it for domestic travel, but if we wanted to include
Right.
for international travel, must be pre-approved by the board. I don't have any objection to that whatsoever.
What about domestic travel over a certain amount? So if you're spending just as much for domestic travel, if they're going for a week or however long, shouldn't that have to come through the board as well? If you're spending $3,000, I'm just saying.
I'm going to have to disagree with everyone on this. I'll say, okay, leave international travel in, but the budget is approved by the board. And if the money is in the budget, we've already approved it. If the travel budget needs to be extended, then it comes back to the board to do a budget amendment.
And all travel and conferences do have to get approved by the branch or the supervisor of the employee and myself.
We also look at the training and travel budget, and we don't fully, we'll often say, because of the budget, we can't cover the full amount, but we'll cover half of it. You can choose to go, you can say, okay, then I'm not going to go, or you can choose to go. So there is there is also based on the budget. We say to people, there's been several times where we have said to people, we can't pay for this because it will spend money on the budget. But if you handle your own lodging, we can definitely reimburse up into a certain percentage.
Oftentimes, just on that note, oftentimes we say we'll pay for the registration cost, and any travel has to get covered by the employee.
Okay, and I just lost that train of thought.
So I'll jump in with a quick question then, Sarah. So if it was let's go back to IFLA, right? Is there any employee can go, or does it have to be a specific employee? If it's a, librarian, entry-level librarian, if it's, I don't know, someone at the circulation desk, is it anyone in reference to the conference, or do you guys have a requirement?
So we require the individual to fill out a request form for travel, and it explains why they are requesting to go to such a conference, what they will gain from it, and what they plan to share with staff. So it's a multi-level.
Okay.
So we can't have like one of our clerks say, oh, I'm going to go to IFLA just because I want to see how libraries work in Denmark. It's usually because there's a specific event or a specific session that they want to how it pertains to their specific career or their specific position, and then what they plan on reporting back to staff on it.
And it also is connected to staffing as well.
Mm-hmm.
So we sometimes say no to individuals going to a conference, they're going away, because the supervisor looks at the schedule and says, I don't have enough staff that are free that I'm able to send you. Like if a conference falls on the second Tuesday of the month, I don't go to that conference because that whole week is bananas and I need to be at work.
I remembered my two trains of thought. The first one is, does the staff get paid when they're at conference? And are there overtime concerns? Or do they have to take their own time and use vacation or personal time? That's number one.
Yep.
And number two, my second question is, because continuing education is going to be required of board members if the new governor signs it. What about board continuing education? Should a board member be reimbursed for flying to ALA in Washington in the summer?
So to answer both, it is you're on paid time while you're there, and you're expected to be at the conference for 7.5 hours, and any additional time that you spend on the conference or at the training is yours. We do factor in travel to those hours as well.
Okay.
And we have paid for training and travel for trustees as well.
So who wants to go to IFLA in Iceland, ladies? I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
I'm gonna go anyway. You can go. You can go for $99 in the Newburgh. What is the Stewart Airborne Base? $99, and I'm going to go see the Northern Lights when the pandemic is over. Oh, that's where I'm going. Thank you.
For sure.
Yes.
We had a staff member who actually took advantage of that offer, and they said it was one of the best trips they've ever been on. So
I'm sure.
So getting back to it, does this have to be written, the travel and meal policy with trustees included into it or not, is my first question. And my second question is, what does CDW or LDW mean? Is somebody answering that?
Is it
I think that's
commercial?
the insurance for the rental vehicle, right?
Yes.
It's optional when you rent a vehicle if you're gonna get their insurance.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, so I
What is
believe
it?
that's what
Collision
that
and
is.
liability damage,
Yeah.
collision damage waiver and liability damage waiver coverage.
Thank you. These are words I just don't know. Thank you.
Yes.
And I thought I knew all the acronyms out there. Lodging commercial. What is reasonable use? What is reasonable? The library reimbursed lodging expenses at reasonable. And as I was reading through all of this, I was thinking, why aren't you using the government per diem rates? Why?
We are using the government per diem rates.
But it's not in this document. And this document was done in September 2017.
Yeah, for the multi-day per diem reimbursements, we always went off of this. This policy was supposed to be reviewed annually. This was going to be actually my suggestion. We had it scheduled to be reviewed annually because we would look up the per diem, government per diem rates and add them directly to the policy. I would like to change it so we state that it references, even though we were referencing it, we were updating it annually. So I would just cut that out.
Did you read my mind?
Yes.
Let's do that, please.
Because I thought it would be much easier. And for the reasonable, it's the idea that if you're looking at booking.com for hotels in Atlanta and you see the average hotel price is $200 a night, but you can stay at the Grand Hilton Resort for $1,000 a night, that is not reasonable.
Well, that wouldn't fall under the per diem rates either.
Correct.
So instead, again, I hate the word reasonable because it's in everybody's own mind and definition. So why don't you say the library reimbursed lodging expenses at the government per diem rate? Or the conference rate?
Yes.
And again, one other thing about the government per diem, they take it based city by city. So Atlanta might be more expensive than Syracuse.
Right.
Yeah, when we looked at this policy last, but we didn't make changes, Dr. Robinson pointed us in the direction of a website that we could use that, can be referenced, but I don't remember the website.
I sent it in a link today.
Okay,
Yep, it's the U.S. General Services Administration website.
that is the one.
And I think that would make this a whole lot easier.
So in reference to the single room occupancy, what if there isn't anything available? What if it was only a double full available? But it's for one person, they're not having an additional person, would that still qualify?
The intent is if we do go with the government per diem rate, then it would pay that rate for the hotel room.
So then we don't even need to have that in there, then the
Correct.
occupancy, we can take that out.
Yep.
Correct.
Okay.
It can be really condensed.
Yep. Are you guys still seeing my changes that I'm making? Because I had that as the
Yeah.
track change.
Yes.
And I don't know, so when the hotel or motel is the conference or convention site, this states that reimbursement will be limited to the conference rate, but that conference hotel might be actually higher than the per diem rate. So do we want will be reimbursed at the conference rate instead of
I would
limited
say the per diem rate. I
Just
think
keep
I
it
would
at per
rather,
diem?
I would rather do the government that rate because the conference rate is just cheaper so that they can fill it's the deal that whoever's doing the conference just is like, hey, we're doing a conference at your hotel. We're going to get a bunch of people. So I'm just nervous because sometimes like myself, I don't choose to go to I'm not sure I'm going to the conference until a few weeks before because so many things are going on.
Mhm.
So I would just worry that staff members would be paying out of pocket partially because they couldn't get the conference rate when the conference rate is really a special. I think if we keep it to the government rate, that's probably the best way to do it.
So I think what I was saying though is it sometimes flipped, where the conference I've seen where I think Albany had a per diem rate of $114 when I looked it up today for lodging per night per hotel. The conference hotel might actually be at 150 because it's the Hilton or the Renaissance, so it's a little more upscale hotel. So technically the conference rate, even though it's cheaper than the normal hotel rate, it's more expensive than the per diem that the government is providing.
And what I want to throw in also is that sometimes I have late night meetings that are held in the conference headquarter hotel. And I really don't want to be walking at night. I'm a 65-year-old woman who doesn't walk very quickly. I would rather just walk down to the conference room where it's being held than walking through the city.
So do we want to say whichever is higher just to cover both instances?
Well, I would just say when the hotel or motel is the conference or convention site, reimbursement will be at the conference rate instead of limited to the conference rate.
Yes.
Sarah, I can understand your point. I was just throwing this as an antidote that I know when I stayed in San Francisco and the conference hotel was booked up. So I had to stay in like a nice little boutique, which was probably about a block away. And well, it was fine. But I understand, like you said, if you at night and you're in a surrounding area you're not familiar with, and those neighborhoods change real quick in San Francisco from one block to the next. So yeah, it's advantageous to stay in the conference hotel. But I wanted to go to San Francisco, so I made it happen.
That's actually one of the things I've learned throughout my career is I would always be like, let me find the cheapest hotel available. And I'd be out by the airport or to save money and stuff.
Right.
And then I realized I was spending just as much money on transportation, taxis, or, public transportation to get back to the hotel at night once the shuttles stopped going.
Right.
Or I was walking in a bad neighborhood because I was unfamiliar with the area and I got the hotel and first neighborhood. That's why it was the cheapest hotel.
Right.
So I do see that that's why I think not limited to the conference rate, but at the conference rate, because like I said, it might be actually higher than the per diem.
Right.
Ladies, I've talked enough with all of my opinions. Anything jump out to you in this policy?
Did we want to make the change for
Meals.
airfare that international travel needs to be approved by the board or no?
I don't think it's approved by the board
Okay.
unless it's over the budget.
Okay.
I don't know, Scott.
Which would be covered by the financial policies anyway. You're muted.
I'm comfortable with that, not making that change.
Okay. Just before I moved on, I wanted to make sure.
I think she wanted to add the trustees, right?
Yeah, because we all want to go to Iceland.
Right here. So the purpose of this policy is to outline the reimbursement of expenses to employees or board members.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, active board members.
Thank you.
With the meal per diem, with the travel expenses, are you using the same type of logic with the hotels? Because as you said that like if the conference is including the lunch and the dinner, then no. But I know for myself, I get a per diem based on the city that I'm visiting. And so right here is up to $20.
We're going to get rid of, I think we're going to get rid of all of that. Melanie, can you pull up what the per diem page looks like? And it's updated every year in October for the following year.
Yep.
Yeah, it's right below it on that same website. That same website, they have one for meals.
Yep.
Yeah.
Or you could just do per diem
Right.
rates.
Per diem based on, the city.
So
Let's do California, San Francisco. I think this is the fairest way to do it. It's
that's fair.
It's not subjective. If you just click on California on the map.
Okay, there you go. There it is. So they do if you're doing the whole day, meals and incidental expenses for a day is $76. If you were to break it out by, you got 18 for breakfast, 19 for lunch, 34 for dinner, $5 for incidental expenses. If for the first and last day of travel, they're expecting you to have not full 3 meals because you're traveling, you're having 1 meal at home. So that's your first and last day of travel. They usually cut.
Right.
And for all of these, that's your max, and then you have to submit receipts.
The only thing that I find abhorrent is it doesn't take in the tip in the restaurants.
I always give my lovely story of once I went to Washington, D.C. and asked for my alcohol to be put on a separate bill for dinner. And they asked why. And I said, because I'm a government employee and we're not allowed to dispense alcohol. And they said, everybody else in the city does. Why can't you?
Because you're a librarian.
And I'm like, because I'm a librarian, I'm not that high as a government official.
Because if everyone jumped off the bridge, doesn't mean I have to follow.
I will get dinged on that. So.
Right.
So Melanie, do you feel
Yes.
comfortable just saying per diem for everything?
Yep. So that first line, I did want to just mention the reasoning for that first line is for all day local workshops and conferences, and that's such as Upper Hudson's having a day-long conference on cataloging techniques, and they're not providing lunch. We do allow people, since they're not at their home branch, they don't know what the refrigerator situation is, so they won't bring lunch.
Excuse me.
Bless you. They might have,
Thank
they're
I'm
varying from
thinking.
their traditional eating habits for the day because they're at a local conference. We do allow them $20 for reimbursement for lunch.
Okay, that's fair.
So for multi-day per diem reimbursements will follow, let's see. Multi-day per diem reimbursements. Will follow. See, how did we include it up here? The government per diem rate. And then we did also give if a meal is included in a conference registration fee or replaced by a legitimate business meal, the cost of the event shall be deducted from the per diem account. Do we still want to include that or no?
No,
I was
They just
saying
don't-
no.
they don't spend the whole $76 if they're getting a freebie,
Okay.
which they probably shouldn't be doing because the ethics of accepting something from a vendor, but that's a whole nother story.
I will just add that no, it shouldn't be included because I don't know if you have a form, which you have the conference registration form, and it includes the breakfast or the lunch, whatever is included in the conference, and then when it goes to get approval, you already know how many days per they're going to be there anyway, so how many meals they're going to have, so you would just give them that based on what the conference is offering.
I remember Brenda saying at the meeting in that the VA said you're allowed $76 a day and they didn't have to produce the receipts.
And I think that's one of the reasons this was brought up, because we are requiring receipts, and I
think we should require receipts.
So-
This
so
is
do I.
public money.
yeah. Now, I do admit that in the past, I have done where I get $76 a day. I spend $2 on breakfast because I'm grabbing a granola bar, and I spend $5 on lunch because I'm getting a smoothie or something, because I tend to just work my way through conferences. And then we'll have a nice dinner and I'll spend a little over the dinner price, but use up a little bit more of my per diem. So that's why I think as long as they don't go over the per diem for
Right.
the day.
But I also think that you still have to give that receipt of
Oh, yeah.
$76.
Yep. So I'm still good with the original itemized receipts are required for all meal purchases. They should be required for all purchases that are being reimbursed, in all honesty.
I agree.
So let's say, for example, I just want to be clear, if they only spend, they don't spend the allotted $76, you'll still pay for whatever they did spend. And if they did spend over that amount, you'll still pay up to $76, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
I'm not sure you can get an original receipt anymore for tolls.
I think you would have to contact the EasyPass and get the
statement.
statement from EasyPass.
Can you use the, from the website, how much it costs to go from here to Schenectady rather than the individual receipt? Can you use the EasyPass chart?
That would be up to you guys.
I would say yes.
I don't even know how to get into my EasyPass account. Well, I do.
Well, I'm wondering now, because you don't have to have technically have the pass, it goes by your license plate, if you can.
If you know you're driving, if you know you're driving from Albany to Syracuse and back, I think you could use this with wherever the official.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think it's what, $5.35 or $6 or $6.70. I know Buffalo is, it's probably like
you were saying
17
Buffalo, saying Schenectady. I'm like, I hope it's not that much, because I do.
yeah, they Schenectady 25 cents or 20 cents or something.
I think went up to 35.
Yeah.
Um,
So original receipts, EasyPass statement, well, instead of EasyPass statement or rate
Set by EasyPass.
I'll say website rate.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, did we say anything about the tips?
Tips are unfortunately not covered.
Unless you order a less expensive meal.
Really, I've always been told the tips aren't covered. You have to cover the tips yourself. You're shaking your head no.
Yeah, tips are not supposed to be covered.
Yeah.
So is not, are tips not, is tips, should tips be added to expenses not reimbursable?
To clarify it, yeah. I think it's on the government site of what gets reimbursed. I think on the government site, it specifically says tips are not covered, but we can clarify it as well for expenses not reimbursable.
Cool. Non-company employees are spouses, best friends, and children.
Where do you see that?
Go down. Travel for non-company employees.
The only time I've seen that used is if for lactating mothers who bring their children with them. The child is included, so they might have to buy a plane ticket.
Oh, I don't know. Let's talk to legal about that. Jarre, Brigitte, any other suggestions, comments?
Oh, just a clarification, we're talking illegal because we are opposed to the non-company employees, or they're not, I wouldn't think they would get reimbursed for them if they brought them along. So why are we,
There's, unless the individual has a bona fide company purpose.
attending the.
I don't know what that means.
Okay.
I wonder if it was included for any individuals with a disability who relies on a spouse for any assistance.
I don't know the answer. That's why I think Bob needs to give us. Because I know if for ADA, sometimes an aide would have to come and be paid for.
Okay. Thank you.
Now for the hardest part of this entire evening, our
I
next
second.
meeting date.
So just for clarification, for the art exhibition policy, I'll be looking into creating the reconsideration form based off of the reconsideration form. And then were you going to work on the submission form for new artists? Ellen?
No, you were going to do that. I was going to do the reconsideration form and you volunteered for both.
Okay.
Thank you.
I thought I was doing one or the other, but I can do both. And then for the first aid, I'll combine the two, add the Narcan, and then we had what question for legal on first aid?
The reporting within 24 hours, the incident
Well,
reports.
That's not the question. That has to be added to the first aid policy. The question is, ask about liability if someone were to so-called sign off on responsibility for an incident and then later tries to come back against the library. What is the procedure? Do we even have a sign off? Like what is that whole idea?
Gotcha. Okay, I just wanted to confirm. And then this one, I have the note that we want Bob to comment on why to include or exclude that statement
Right.
for the not travel for non-company employees. Okay,
Right.
There are EpiPens in the first aid kits, right?
no,
I think you have to have
Really?
a prescription for an EpiPen.
yeah, because you have to have the prescription for it. We don't. Hospitals can because they're hospitals, but other locations cannot have the EpiPens on
Is
site.
there any sort of a Benadryl or something in there?
I don't believe so.
That's a medication.
Yeah, we can't provide medications other than the Narcan because we've been specifically trained.
Even Tylenol?
Thank you.
I will be.
But we have Narcan in there, you said?
We do have
I don't
Narcan,
think
yeah.
that it's-
I'm curious to what council's reaction to Narcan being added to that is going to be.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the Good Samaritan does cover,
Mm.
because DLD has a long website, part of the website dealing with Narcan and Good Samaritan.
Yep.
All right, now for the hard part, next meeting date. Would it be best to send out a doodle poll?
If everyone's here, that's not necessary. Can I propose the 27th? It's a Monday.
I'm gonna be in Maine.
Okay. The whole week?
Yeah,
Lucky
Um,
you.
What about the 4th?
The fourth. would
fourth
work, yes.
works.
One
Yeah,
week
that's
before
what
the
I was,
meeting.
I was on the mute when I suggested the fourth.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
Javed,
Yeah.
how does the 4th look for you?
That looks okay for now.
Okay, you want to keep it at 5:30? You want 6 o'clock? What does everybody prefer?
5:30 works for me. I have to drive in from Saratoga.
5:30.
5:30 is good.
Perfect. And it will be virtual. I'm setting it up. I'll save, you'll receive everything tomorrow.
Okay.
But yes, and that's actually decent because that's Monday and the draft board packet will go out that Wednesday, the same week. And that gives a little extra time then to do a little homework on some of these. Are you okay with that, Scott?
Yep.
I won't be at the October 12th meeting, but I trust Brigitte and Jarret to present.
The minutes, yeah. I'll be sending you the minutes though to approve
For this meeting.
for this meeting.
May I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Motion.
A
I
second?
second.
And
I second.
before we vote on it, do we get any public comments?
No public comment.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Rebecca, can you stay on just for a second?
Absolutely.
Thanks.
And Scott, we're face-to-face tomorrow?
We are face to face tomorrow. We're face to face tomorrow, but it is on the agenda to discuss the changes in open meeting law and what meetings we're going to do face to face and what meetings we're going to do virtual.
Okay. Good night, everybody, and thank you
Thank you,
so
everybody.
much.
Good night.
I enjoyed all these conversations, so thank you. This was a really great P&G meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. It's very
And we're going
good.
to Iceland.
Yes. Yes. That's what Rebecca and I are going to set up right now.
Bye.
I need to go to Paris and you need to see the Northern Lights. So,
Yes, exactly.
Don't forget to end the live stream.
oh yes, I'm so sorry.
Uh-oh.
Okay, hold on.
I want to make sure that that was concluded.